You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Hi.
How you doing?
Great.
So we don't have to go into the wheres and wherefores of it, but I laid some pretty heavy stuff on you this morning, and are you okay with that? Everything?
Yeah.
Are we all good?
I think so.
All right, good. So now we're laying intrigue. Ooh, what are they talking about? So one of the things that recently happened is that I got a nice note from a guy. I wonder if we're supposed to, I assume we don't have confidentiality with our audience, but maybe we shouldn't identify them. I don't know.
I think that's a better move, not to.
Not to? Okay. So I got a message from an individual who had watched the episode we did on hypervigilance, and what his question was that he was going to go and he was going to see a therapist, and he felt like that there was a lot in that episode that resonated with him. He felt like that was an explanation for what he was experiencing, and his question was, should he tell his therapist that, should he say, I think this is what I'm experiencing, or should he not? And if he did, would that influence the therapist and somehow alter or impair their ability to make a good diagnosis?
Well, my initial reaction to that is that you put the cart before the horse. If a client comes in, they come in, and in my experience, 35 years, they come in with a presenting problem, an established concern. Why are you here? I'm here because my father died. I'm here because I got fired. I'm here because I had an affair. I'm here because I can't sleep. Whatever the thing is. And it's like doing therapy with someone is like peeling an onion. You take away layers of the onion to get to the core. And you start wherever they bring themselves, the presenting problem. But in my experience, the presenting problem is almost never the real issue in their life. Mm-hmm. And you have to spend time with them. That's why talk therapy is better than just going to a medical doctor and having your blood pressure taken and your blood tests run. Those are useful pieces of data, and there are things for which they are critically important in terms of your physical survival. But if we're talking about emotional distress, psychological issues, then you need to spend some time with somebody who is trained to look for patterns. And so you talk to them about whatever it is you talk to them about, and their job is to ask you questions and to listen accurately and start to make when I was teaching in the university, I would teach my students about a rolling diagnostic impression. Mm-hmm. When you walk in the room, and I would have my students, one of the classes that I taught, they had to find a volunteer client, knowing that they were a student under supervision, and they had to do a diagnostic interview. And there are some forms that you use and questions that you ask and that sort of thing, but they had to do it on a video camera. And then bring it to class, and we would break it down, and we would talk about, what do you see, what do you hear, what do you understand, what do you interpret, what are you thinking? And I regularly would start the video with the person coming in the room, the clinician saying, hello, how are you, why are you, sit down, and then I turn it off. I say, at this point, with this much information, no written information, no forms in your hand, no paperwork, you've seen this person in the waiting room, you've seen them come into your room, or couple or family or whatever it is you're looking at, and you're starting to make assumptions. Mm-hmm. Tell me what your assumptions are. Tell me where they come from. What do you understand at this point? Mm-hmm. And then as you start to talk to them, you may discover, regularly should discover, I'm off base. Mm-hmm. That's coming out of my projection onto them from wherever my issues might be, until I have information from them. Mm-hmm. And then they give me information that I have to use to redefine my rolling diagnostic impression. Mm-hmm. So I would say to this individual who wrote to you, it's about the dance of relationship, and you should go to a therapist, tell them whatever it is that you have on your mind to tell them, and process how you feel in that holding environment. Mm-hmm. Do you feel good about being in the room with them? Do you feel like they're understanding you? Do you feel like they're judging you, or they're dismissive of you, or rejecting you? How do you feel? And if it doesn't feel good, don't go back to that therapist. Go find another one. Mm-hmm. Don't give up and say, oh, well, therapy doesn't work. Go find another one.
Right.
I used to tell new clients all the time who were hesitant, who were reluctant, especially men, come and see me, have a conversation with me. If you don't want to come back, I won't charge you. But if you do decide to come back, then pay me for this visit.
Right.
And so I believe in this process enough that I'll speculatively give you an hour or two of my time for you to decide.
But I think you hit on a really important point, which is, but don't give up. And the truth is that some clients, I'm not going to say a lot of clients, but some clients are using that first initial meeting as a way to justify their belief that therapy is not going to do them any good. So they're looking for,
especially marriage counseling, people come in and they've already decided we're going to get divorced, but they want to be able to tell people we tried everything, even therapy. Therapy didn't help us.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what I told him was, absolutely go and tell the person what it is that you're thinking. I said, it's very common.
And if you're really hypervigilant, you watch the therapist for signs of attentiveness, acceptance, rejection, whatever.
Exactly. And, I said, it is very common that people will come in and they'll say, I think I have this, or I've been diagnosed with that. And that doesn't affect in any way what I am perceiving in the client and the differential diagnosis that I would eventually make. Now, one of the things that you told us very early that I took to heart and have always lived by is don't make a diagnosis if you don't have to.
Right.
Don't label a person unless there's a need to label them.
Absolutely.
And so that really brings us into the deeper conversation of why diagnose anybody anyway? What's the whole point?
So there are 2 points. One is if you involve a group of professionals, if there's a physician, if there's a psychiatrist, if there's a psychologist, if there's a counselor, they're working as a group to try to help an individual. If you use a diagnosis out of the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, I think what's the current one, 5?
Yes.
6 now.
No, 5.
5. Then if you use that, everybody on the group knows what we're talking about.
Right.
And
so it's a shortcut.
If you take therapy notes, which you're supposed to take by law in our state, and you share them with people on the committee with signed releases and appropriate HIPAA requirements and all that stuff, then they have a framework by which to understand what you're taking notes about. So it helps everybody come together to provide better assistance to the client. The second reason that you use a diagnosis is for third-party payment. So if they have insurance, then the insurance company has a committee that says, well, we'll pay so much for this diagnosis, and we need to see these criteria lists from the clinician saying, well, this is what I'm seeing. And then we'll decide. And we'll approve, 7 visits over a 3-week period.
Right.
And then they'll pay for 7 visits, whatever they pay, the contract with the clinician. But then the clinician gets caught up in the whole steamroller of you have to have 7 visits, no more. You could have less. You have to be within the 3-week window, or they won't pay you because you're out of permission. And then you have to, and if they disagree with your treatment plan that you submit, then you have to go before a committee of people that this company has hired, whose goal is to save the company money,
right?
Not to provide the best quality of care for the client. So it's to me. Then there's a third concern that I have, which is that the client will often wear the diagnosis. They'll go look it up. They'll look it up on the internet. They'll look it up in the DSM. They'll find out. And they say, well, I should have these patterns of behavior. I should have these patterns of thought. And then they start working on making sure they have those.
And so they become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, the diagnosis. So my thought in teaching my students was to say, pay attention to the person. And say to the person, you certainly seem to have depression and to be depressed about this or that or the other, but I'm not giving you the diagnosis of depression unless I have to for legal reasons or payment reasons or what have you. And then if I have to give somebody a diagnostic code, my job ethically is to give you the least damaging, clinically accurate diagnosis. So I want to use the most global descriptor, not the most precise descriptor. And it's hard to do because if you look at the DSM, you have clusters of diagnostic categories, like personality disorders, and it'll say the person will have 3 of the following 5 symptoms, or 5 of the following 10 symptoms, and within that list are behaviors that fall into 4 or 5 diagnostic labels, and all the same list of behaviors are all 5 labels. So how do you make the proper distinction?
So you have to think in terms of a couple of phrases that we use in the process, and we talk about making a differential diagnosis. So
diagnosis
ruling out,
tree, axis 1, axis 2, axis 3,
things. So you rule out the things that you think it isn't, and then you focus on the things it is until you come to a conclusion. But then you can also have what's called comorbidity, which means that 2 things happen at the same time.
Well, like depression and anxiety.
Exactly.
Yeah. It commonly happens that one presents in front of the other, but both exist.
Right.
So I come into you as a clinician and I say, I'm depressed. And you say, well, let's talk about that. And we talk about it and discover, I'm depressed. And I mean, legitimately diagnosably depressed. If I get better in terms of the therapy that you're doing with me, in terms of my body chemistry changing, then sometimes we discover, and in addition to that, I'm anxious. And so then we have like generalized anxiety disorder, or we have some specific anxiety, nightmares, phobias, what have you, that I had buried and wasn't dealing with, but now I'm dealing with them.
So you can have 2 things that happen at the same time.
Yeah.
And what we usually don't do is that we usually don't give people more significant diagnoses comorbidly. So we usually don't say you're schizophrenic and you're bipolar, because those things overlap so much. At least in outpatient therapy, we don't do that. If you go to a hospital, then they may do things like that because they're going to medicate you for those things. But in outpatient therapy, we don't do that. What I think in terms of is what is the most accurate, least invasive, most legally defensible. So what I talk to people about is when I do this and when I teach people to do it, what I say is imagine that you had to defend this in front of either a court of your peers or
you say that to yourself or to the client?
No, I say that to myself or to students. I don't say it to the client. But I think about, if I had to defend this, could I do it? If I look up the symptom tree in the DSM-5, can I say, okay, this person presents with this? And if they said, well, what makes you think that? Can I give them examples and justify the reason that I'm identifying these symptoms as being visible in this client?
Well, and because of the way the game is played in terms of third-party payments, then you have to, in your clinical notes, make notations that you're finding these particular things in the conversation. I mean, it has to be ethical. It has to be legitimate. You can't make it up. But you have to keep looking for that. And then sometimes both you and the client get trapped on this treadmill of we're just looking at depression, or we're just looking at anxiety, or we're looking at bipolar, and not seeing other things in a global perspective that are impacting this client's life.
Right.
What's the client's ability to make better decisions?
And it also is impacted by the training of the individual therapist. If you are heavily Rogerian, Carl Rogers said, don't diagnose your client. And so if that is the therapy that you have subscribed to, you might find it harder to really be able to see your client that way, even though you may have to do it to be able to get third-party reimbursement. So you have to figure out how you're going to balance that scale as well.
Right. And then you get into an additional complication about the level of education and licensure. as an LPC, you are licensed to diagnose. But if your diagnosis disagrees with that of a medical doctor,
right,
a psychiatrist,
they could trump you.
They'll trump you, exactly. And in the paperwork,
to use a term,
yeah, in the paperwork that follows the client around, the insurance companies look at the diagnosis given by the highest level of education, and the others they just tend to dismiss out of hand.
And that's actually a conversation that I want to go more in depth with. So let's take a break, and when we come back, let's pick that up.
All right.
Hey, Brett.
Yes.
What's your favorite thing about Psych with Mike?
The opportunity to engage in mental gymnastics with you.
Wow, that is really powerful. So,
it's fun.
Do you think that that's beneficial for other people?
I have no clue. I would hope so, but I have no clue.
So people should write us and let us know.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
That would be great.
Especially if they agree with me.
As always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back, and very specifically, the place that I wanted to go with that is I did not send this to you, but I will put it up on the show notes, and that is the whole idea of at the level of LPC, and there are different ways in which different states use LPC. So in the state of Missouri, where we live, LPC is licensed professional counselor. In Illinois, I think it's licensed clinical professional counselor.
Yeah.
And then
LC,
other states,
PC.
yeah. And then other states have even other things that they call that. But generally, what they're talking about is an individual that is required to be either master's or doctoral level trained, and in the field of counseling psychology,
and pass a national exam, standardized national exam, and have taken in all 50 states the exact same educational courses.
Right. And so then the question is, can those individuals diagnose? Do they have diagnostic authority?
Right.
And this is a conversation, sometimes even an argument, that we'll have with students or with other professionals. And the answer is there is only one state in the union for which diagnostic authority is prohibited by individuals who hold an LPC license, and that's the state of Indiana. So in Indiana, it is directly stated in the statutes that they're not going to diagnose.
Right.
In 32 states, the statute expressly says that the individual who holds that degree has the ability to diagnose. In the rest of the states, it is not expressly identified in the statute, but it is implied because those individuals have wording in the statute that says, you have to take an assessment course. Well, you don't need to take an assessment course unless you're going to diagnose people. And you have the authority to collect third-party reimbursement. If you have the ability to collect third-party reimbursement, then you have to diagnose. So the law can't put you in a catch-22 where you have the ability to collect payment, but you can't satisfy the requirements for collecting that payment.
Right.
So the short answer is, in every state but Indiana, individuals at the master's level who hold a licensed professional counselor certification, credential, licensure, whatever it's called in that state, have the ability to diagnose individuals and collect third-party payments.
It's a challenge to deal with insurance companies. And in my experience over the last 15 years, more and more clinicians say to patients, clients, if you come and see me, I'll see you. I'll give you whatever paperwork you need me to fill out, but I won't work with your insurance company. You pay me, and then you use the paperwork that we generate, and you negotiate your reimbursement from the insurance company. Because the insurance companies were chronically slow pay, and then the legislature, at least in Missouri, required them to pay within so many days. But they would wait months, and then they would reject your claim because box 14 wasn't marked correctly.
Right.
And you have to resubmit the whole shebang. And so then we had secretarial staff that were spending all of their paid time going back negotiating with insurance companies on reimbursements, and half the time, third of the time, end up having the claim rejected. So you'd done the work, but the insurance company wasn't going to pay. And if you had just taken the copay from the client, then you're out the rest of that money.
Right.
So what many clinicians, if not most today, and I'm not current, so I don't know, but what many of the ones of my experience started to do is say, I do a cash-only business. You pay me. I'll give you the paperwork. You deal with the insurance company, and you get your reimbursement. And they should reimburse you for X amount based on my understanding of your insurance, but I don't control that.
And so when I joined your practice, when we were in West County Psychological Associates, when we were in the group practice, that was something that was that was taught to us, is how to exist as practitioners in the world of insurance and not accept insurance.
Right.
And when you say to clients, "Oh, I don't accept insurance," some people are upset, and that's perfectly fine. If you need to access your insurance to be able to get health care, then you can do that. But for most people...
But I won't do it for you.
But
I'll cooperate with you and give you the paperwork that you need, the diagnosis that you need, or whatever. But you have to deal with getting it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so basically it's the difference of being in network or out of network.
Yes.
So if you have an HMO, which is a health maintenance organization, those are closed organizations, so they will only pay individuals who are in network.
Right.
So if you have an HMO and you go out of network, a lot of times you're just on the hook for all of that. If you have a PPO, a preferred provider organization, or a POS, point of service plan, then those plans will pay with a copay the out-of-network cost or a percentage of that for the service, right?
Yeah, which is usually like 50%.
Well, it can be up to 80%. I've had clients who got 80%. And so if you're in the network, you get the copay and then you fill out the paperwork and they get the reimbursement. We didn't do that. We didn't take the copay, and so
one of the reasons for that is to get in the network as a clinician. You have to agree to take less money.
Yeah. Right.
So if I normally charge $100 to a client, the network says if you take one of our clients, you can only charge them $75.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're contractually obligated then for anybody who has that insurance to take less money. And so a lot of times you'll hear therapists advertise these fees like, $150, $200 an hour. Most of them aren't making that because most of them have network contracts that prohibit them from accepting payments over like $65. So they can get your copay of $20, get $65 from the insurance company. They make $85, but they're advertising themselves as $150 an hour. So anybody who comes to them and doesn't use their insurance may be paying that full rate, but most people who use the insurance aren't paying that. And so then the practitioner has to then work for less money. In the paradigm that we've always subscribed to, we just have a flat rate, and people paid us when they got services. Then if they access their out-of-network benefit, they got the percentage of that back from the insurance company.
And they got the check directly. It didn't go to us.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is really, really difficult to understand, especially for new practitioners who are getting into the field.
Well, I was going to say, in today's market, I'm still licensed, even though I'm retired. I don't have a practice any longer. But because I'm licensed, I get emails from these companies that want me to work for them.
Oh, my gosh. And lately, it's been insane.
Yeah. But they're asking me, they're saying, you can work from home. You can work any number of hours you want to work. You can do it with Zoom. And we provide the technology. We provide the clients. We provide the money. You don't have to do the billing. You don't have to do the insurance. You just sit in front of the computer for however many hours you choose to work a week. But they don't pay very much.
Right.
So
you could have 20 hours or even more. You could have 40 hours of clients and get paid, $35 an hour, or you could go out and find your own clients, charge, whatever. So absolutely, it's a catch-22. But
you don't have the administrative costs. You don't have the secretarial costs. You don't have the marketing costs.
Absolutely.
You just have to decide.
As the individual, you have to decide what is your level of willingness to do the work to be able to be a solo practitioner, because let's be honest, it can be tedious, right? Doing your own billing,
more than tedious.
Yeah. And yet you can make significantly more money, or you can have someone else manage all of those administrative duties for you and make less money. You have to ask yourself,
it's what's a fair payment. I mean, if they're doing all that for you and you don't have to do it. But the other thing to remember too, in my opinion, there are a lot of therapists that are licensed to practice that aren't worth a damn.
Okay.
There are.
That's true. They're bad teachers. They're bad cops. They're bad therapists.
Yeah.
There's no question. But what I would say is, if anybody is out there listening to this, you're new to the field or maybe even seasoned in the field, and you have questions about this, let us know. We will try and give you answers if we have the ability to do so. But basically, the idea of diagnosing really is mostly about being able to get a third-party reimbursement. So when you were talking about going into consults earlier, when we would have consults in the group practice, we would oftentimes ask people to make a diagnosis to be able to test their ability to be able to draw that diagnosis from the information that the client was presenting, to help them practice that. But we weren't worried about what the diagnosis was.
So you're talking about in the olden days.
Yeah.
Because I was in private practice before Missouri required a license. Mm-hmm. And then I have one of the lowest license numbers in the state, which is why I'm not letting it go. But when we first began to practice, we had to practice under the supervision of a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. And so we were in a group practice with a number of clinicians, and we would have staff meetings every week. And in the beginning days, we would have to present cases to the group, all of whom were licensed clinicians, to say, this is a client that's come in, this is what they're saying, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm going to diagnose. And then we'd be quizzed. It was a very Socratic method. Why are you choosing that definition? What are you looking for? What do you expect to happen? What's your time frame? What's your treatment plan? I don't know that people do that anymore. And I think there's...
Oh, really?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't either, because I've been on my own for so long that I don't know.
But I would encourage it, and I used to encourage my students always, if you're going to do solo practice, find a group of other clinicians to do co-supervision.
Right.
And regularly meet and talk about your more difficult clients, or talk about your issues that are cropping up for you and trying to do the work, whether it's dealing with the insurance companies, or whether it's, I'm getting a lot of suicide calls lately, or I'm getting a lot of, whatever it might be, because you need some frame of reference support.
Right. So I guess for me, in closing, what I would say about diagnosing in general is, number one, you're a person, you're not a diagnosis. Don't let someone take your personhood away by giving you a label. That's just not what it's for, and there's no benefit in becoming a label. So resist that and understand that the individual who's making that diagnosis is a person, a flawed individual. And just because they're giving you a diagnosis may not necessarily mean that you are that thing, right? So there are lots of reasons why people would want to diagnose you with something that might be more serious than what is actually going on. So if you're going to see a psychiatrist, the psychiatrist has to justify why they're going to give you a medication.
Well, and also remember that just because you have insurance, it doesn't mean that the insurance company gives a damn about your health care or your mental health. They are concerned with making a profit.
Right.
And so they're trying to pay as few claims as possible.
So both on the side of the client, but also on the side of the practitioner. Yeah. What we espouse is the least invasive, most legally defensible diagnosis. And if
legally
you don't,
and professionally, as a professional, there are things I should know.
Right.
So if I'm seeing those things and I say so, it should be accurate.
That's right. Yeah. If you are psychotic, I shouldn't pretend like you're not psychotic.
And you hear the voices too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when we talk about this idea of being legally defensible, the individual, the practitioner, should be able to explain why it is that they feel like this is the appropriate diagnosis. And finally, what I would say is, if you don't need a label, don't give people a label.
Right. Amen.
All right, so hopefully that's beneficial for people. As we said, if anybody has any questions about this, because this is and can be a really, really dense subject, please let us know, and we will try and find an answer for you if we can at all possibly do so. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. If you want to get a hold of us, you can get us psychwithmike.com. You can find us on Facebook and TikTok and Twitter at Psych with Mike. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.